Let's move on to the NFL Wildcard review. So we had a lot of good games this past week. Uh, let's
Yeah,
let's kick off with the Rams upsetting the Seahawks. The Seahawks lost 20-30. Uh, what did you see in this game? What were your takeaways?
I mean, it seems like the Rams found their workhorse within Cam Akers. Cam Akers kind of became their Todd Gurley when they needed him most. I mean, if you're an avid college football fan or a Florida State fan, you probably seen that Cam Akers is he was probably the best part of that offense when when he was on the Seminoles. So, him being emerging as a good running back now, I mean, it might be surprising to people who haven't seen it, but obviously, like I said, if you're a fan of Florida State or college football, you should see this as no surprise. Also, I want to say that like a lot of people came back for this game, or a good amount of people came back for this game. Excuse me, Andrew Whitworth, he returned for this game after he had I think MCL and PCL injury back in Week 10 against the Seahawks. I think also the fact that Jared Goff played, even though he was not supposed to, I think having him as an emergency quarterback was a really good idea on Sean McVay's part, because obviously it was enough for them to, take out this weakened Seahawks team. I could not really explain why the Seahawks struggled so much, but it just happened that way. This team has not looked good for weeks now. So them losing, I don't know if I'd call it an upset, because the Rams did beat the Seahawks earlier in the season, but it was a good game for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, my notes, my takeaways are just like, Russ played like hot dog water. Like it was
Yeah.
pretty bad. He played very poor. He was not looking anywhere close to the MVP caliber player that he was earlier in the season. The run game just hasn't really looked the same for the Seahawks since kind of Chris Carson went down all those weeks ago. It just hasn't really looked the same since. Their offense in general hasn't looked the same since that. Pete Carroll flat out, I mean, he just got outcoached. I mean, Sean McVay was actually absolutely fantastic in that game. And my biggest issue with the Seahawks is that they need an O line so bad. Like
Oh my goodness.
they're
Yes,
not
they
going to
do.
get anywhere without it. I mean, they say like the battle is won in the trenches. So you need the O line and the D line are your foundation for your offense and your defense. So you can have like Russ and you can put a bunch of wide receivers and good weapons around him. But if you don't have like an O line to protect him, you guys probably aren't going to go to the Super Bowl anytime soon. Like their D line definitely
Mhm.
got better with Carlos Dunlap on the edge, but their O line just really it needs work. They need to work on that like a lot in this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bad because going into this game, the Rams led the NFL in sacks per game. So them getting 5 sacks on Russ should have been no surprise, but it was just surprising to see Russ continuously just have to get out the pocket because it collapsed like every single second, it seemed like. I think another interesting thing we should probably bring up is Jalen Ramsey, how well he played against
Yeah.
DK Metcalf. They said, according to Next Gen Stats, Ramsey shadowed Metcalf for 22 of his 31 routes, holding him to only 3 catches on 7 targets for 33 receiving yards. The 2 catches he did have when Ramsey was not guarding him were touchdowns, but like the fact that Ramsey did so well against Metcalf, arguably their best receiver, was surprising.
That's pretty ridiculous. I mean, yeah, Ramsey has really matched up well against DK so far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, in general, that entire Rams defense was just really they were hyped up. They were ready for this game. The Seahawks were not ready for this game. I think that's another thing.
Yeah, Jared Goff said that that video of Jamal Adams smoking the cigar after I think their win against the Rams, that stuck in his mind. I guess that like kept him motivated to play him again, and they took him out. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's why like at this level of competition, you can't give any advantages to your opponent at all. So any type of slight or any type of bragging from anywhere previously in the season, the other team will hang on to that and they will use that as motivation.
I
We'll
wish
get
someone told Juju that.
we'll get
I
into
wish.
that later.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the Bills versus the Colts. So the Bills beat the Colts 27-24. This game was kind of surprising. I didn't think it was going to be this close. I'm not going to lie. With all due respect to the Colts, I just didn't think that it was going to. I thought it was going to be more of like a. No, I don't want to say a blowout, but like at least like a 2-point score difference, in my opinion. But the Colts defense is absolutely fantastic. Like I have nothing but good things to say about the Colts defense. Philip Rivers looked pretty good. This might be his last game. So he obviously wanted to show out. And you know what? Josh Allen is he's incredible. Like he's going to be he's I was gonna say he's going to be a future star, but he kind of already is a star right now. And one thing I do want to say as well is that Stephon Diggs has proven everybody wrong this season, and he's showing how much QB and wide receiver chemistry matters. Because obviously he didn't click with Cousins in Minnesota for whatever reason, whether that was due to the offense that was being run or that was just due to Cousins and Diggs. They just didn't click. Sometimes that just happens. But he's clicking with Josh Allen, and it's showing so much. Just when you watch the game, Diggs is always like, somehow he's always open, and Josh Allen's always hitting him. So Stephon Diggs is really showing how much that chemistry matters when it comes to a quarterback and their wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Diggs, the inclusion of Diggs this season was exactly what the Bills needed because they always needed a primary receiver. Diggs was just the perfect person at the perfect time. I think they really, they really ride that duo very well. The offense just runs through those two. But I felt like for me, when they came to this game, as corny as it sounds, I felt like the Colts lost. Like the Bills didn't win, the Colts lost. I know it's so corny and so cliche, but I felt like the Colts, they played, I would say, in my opinion, they played a lot. It seemed like they played a lot better than the Bills did. Obviously, was enough to win, but it was really a lot of missed opportunities for the Colts. Philip Rivers, he slightly throws Michael Pittman, on that fourth and goal at the end of the first half, which, they had an opportunity to go up. And I feel like that's when the momentum kind of shift right there. They missed the field goal. Blankenship missed the field goal. I think that was in the third quarter. I think so. I think that was in the third quarter when they missed the field goal. The failed, fourth down conversion, really that for me, that really shifted the momentum because the Bills, they scored 17 points after that drive. Then it took them a while to the Colts to score again, but I just felt like Philip Rivers, I know you said he played pretty well, but he missed a lot of opportunities to really,
He's played well considering what he's done earlier in the season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the loss to they had the Jaguars is still a head scratcher, but I think
Philip Rivers can play at this age, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Philip Rivers was always been like solid. He's been great before, but he's been like solid as of recent. Just his throwing motion still just throws me off personally. It doesn't look natural. Yeah. But I just think that the Colts, I mean, they really had an opportunity to actually win that game. I mean, it really came down to the last play of the game. I just felt like they definitely shot themselves in the foot with a lot of missed opportunities this game.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Bills defense was surprisingly, it didn't look as good as it's looked in past games. Like you said, like if Philip Rivers did just take advantage of those few opportunities, they could have very well lost this game, which is kind of ridiculous. I'm not sure if that's maybe like a little bit of arrogance on the Bills' part with maybe a little bit underestimating the Colts. But yeah, let's move on to the Bucks versus the football team. So the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Washington football team 31-23. I just want to say this was such a good effort by the Washington football team. I mean, seriously, like if you don't walk away having a newfound respect for this team, after this game, like I don't really know what to say to you.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of props to Taylor Heineke, man. That dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept trying to tell everybody because they're like, oh, they should play Alex Smith. Listen, Alex Smith on literal one leg would have not been able to scramble out of the pocket and do a lot of things that Taylor Heineke did, especially that rushing touchdown he had when he dove. That was
Some baby Lamar stuff right there, man.
that was gutsy. That was gutsy.
Lamar
Especially
did
coming
something
off that.
similar in the game after, but we'll get into that.
I know, but for me, I think what was really surprising to me was the play calling. That I've not been a fan of Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator of Washington football team. I feel like his whole season's been a bunch of dump off passes, screen passes, a lot of short passes. But it seems like he definitely went into his bag of tricks and pushed the envelope a lot. A lot of deeper passes than I'm used to seeing this season. Honestly, offensively, passing wise, this is probably the sharpest game I've seen. Despite the interception that was tipped and caught by the Buccaneers player, but I think like passing wise, I felt like this was the sharpest I see the Washington football team. Running wise, I think ever since that injury, that turf toe injury that Gibson had against the Steelers, he does not look sharp. I think that hurt the team. They couldn't really get like a real running attack going. Because J.D. McKissick, he's a screen back pretty much at this point. Peyton Barber's just not as talented as Gibson. I would have liked to see Lamar Miller get some snaps because they did sign him a couple weeks ago, and they just really never gave him the opportunity to play. And the guy was solid when he was healthy back in the days. The Texans, I think also the defense played. I'll let you say something first. I don't want to get into the defensive part, but I was not happy on the defensive side.
So before you get into the defense, I do want to say Heineke obviously is a story of the night. In my opinion, I think he was pretty on par with Tom Brady in terms of what their production this game, which is kind of ridiculous to say that Taylor Heineke is being compared to Tom Brady. But yeah, I mean, the Bucs defense is a little bit worse than I thought it would be. They really can't deal with mobile quarterbacks, and Heineke took advantage of that. And something else I want to say is that Heineke, he did something that I have not seen Washington do this entire season, was that he would pass up open short passes to go a little bit long. And that really changed how the Bucs had to deal with them, and that changed a lot of the momentum of when they made their little run to try and tie the Bucs towards the end. But yeah, I mean, there was also a couple of really bad missed calls.
Oh my, yeah.
And the refs were not great that night. But this gives me concerns about the Bucs. I know the football teams they have a great defense and stuff like that, but their offense is known for being basically anemic. And also for the Bucs on the offense, I mean, you have Antonio Brown as the third wide receiver, and you can barely beat the football team. That's a little concerning to me. It's actually very concerning to me. I'm not even sure if the Bucs are going to go any further than this, but we'll save that for the next part where we go over the divisional matchups.
Yeah, I want to get back on the Washington football team's quote unquote great defense. I will note that Montez Sweat got a sack on Tom Brady, which was nice to see. Even though Chase Young didn't get any sacks on Tom Brady, De'Aaron Payne got 2, and he also had a forced fumble. I feel like De'Aaron Payne was definitely one of the highlights of that defense that night. But that night reminded me of why, it reminded me that the secondary is still an issue for the Washington football team. Jimmy Moreland gave up an easy touchdown for Antonio Brown. Ronald Darby just could not keep up with Chris Godwin on that long deep pass to him for a touchdown. Ronald Darby and these DBs, they left Mike Evans seemingly open every single drive. He'll always be open for some reason. This dude is way too talented to be open. I really want to talk about Darby because he really got on my nerves the most in that game. Ronald Darby on the regular season, he had according to Pro Focus Football rating, he had a 76 on the regular season, which was pretty good amongst DBs and all that. But in the one wildcard game they had, he had a 28.9 rating, and he tied for second most. He tied for second most catches allowed that weekend, and he was also the second most targeted defensive back. So the fact that it's just a big shift of like just where did this happen? Like, how can you go from a 76 rating and play so well in the regular season, because this is his contract year because you signed on a 1-year deal. And then the next year, and then and then the postseason when they need you to step up the most, you step down. For me, that's a big concern. As much as I like Taylor Heineke, I don't want them to confuse anything. They still need to get a quarterback and they still need to get a defensive back, because those are two situations that they still need these young guys to improve in.
Yeah, and I mean the defense was still, it was okay for what they were going up against. I mean, not many secondaries in the entire league can keep up with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. That's a ridiculous wide receiver trio. It's the best in the league. I think they did okay for the most part. I know Darby wasn't great at all. So I agree they do need upgrades in the secondary. But I think John Bostic did very well tonight. That forced fumble really flipped the momentum of the game. And
yeah,
man, I mean, they were so close. They this could have been the Rams Seahawks game basically. And it almost was. So
yeah, I wasn't, my thing is, I don't know. I just feel like for me, I felt like, I know you're talking about how you said the Bucks offense wasn't that special to you that night. I felt like the Bucks offense was definitely the better part of the team that night. I mean, they took advantage of Washington's secondary. And even for Leonard Fournette showed a glimpse of, the running back he used to be back in Jacksonville, which they have not seen that in a very long time. I would be concerned with that defense, but they will be having Devin White back against the Saints, which would be good for them.
Yeah. By that I just meant that, like, for the level of talent they have on their offense, they should have scored more than just 31 that night.
Oh, if you're saying like that's instant, yeah.
Yeah, they should probably be like averaging at least 35. Like, it's their team is stacked. It's the most stacked team in the league on paper. We know the game isn't played on paper, but on paper it is the most stacked. So they should be doing more, in my opinion. But yeah, let's jump to the Ravens and Titans. So the Ravens beat the Titans 20-13. Why don't you go ahead and tell me what you took away from this game first?
I was shocked. I was shocked by how little Derrick Henry did. This was a complete opposite of the matchup they had in Week 11, where I think I think that Derrick Henry had 100+ rushing yards that game back in Week 11, and then I think they won that game. I think they won that game 30-24, if I recall correctly.
I do want to say
so
though.
I was just,
I do want to say that game, I would kind of throw that out the window because the Ravens were dealing with COVID stuff.
That's true.
Like, their defense was completely wiped in terms of injuries and stuff too. Like, they were literally playing their safety at cornerback at certain points. Like, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, but I was like, the fact is, on the paper, I mean, with context, yes, I do agree with that statement. But at the end of the day, they did lose that game.
Yeah.
But I just felt like, the Titans, it's like their defense didn't even play horrible. Giving up 20 points is not bad, but they literally could not stop Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson ran all over them. And Lamar Jackson was the rushing attack for the Ravens that game. I'm just, this team does not play well when Henry does not play well, because, like you mentioned, I think in the first podcast, if I recall correctly, this team just starts with the play action.
Mm-hmm.
Henry runs, gets a good run. Tannehill just like, hey, let me just, throw it off with a play action. And then they get, big yards from that. But they couldn't do that. They really just had to kind of just throw off the scratch and off the rip. And I mean, it's just not the offense that they thrive in. So, it makes sense that they struggled in that manner. But, to lose like this in a close game, I mean, it was heartbreaking for them. It's heartbreaking.
Okay, so I want to get into this. So this is very interesting. This is a very, very interesting game. So when it kicked off, the Titans went up on the Ravens 10-0. And everyone was like, even the commentators were like, the Ravens had never come down 10-0. Like, they're not a team that plays well, like, coming from behind. But you know what? They just proved that they can win while they're down. They can come back and win. The Ravens defense is seriously clicking. It is one of the most stacked defenses on paper. I mean, Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue, Judon, Derek Wolfe is very good. Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Deshaun Elliott's been playing incredible this season. I mean, this defense is absolutely stacked when healthy, and they've finally been playing like they're stacked. So, yeah, Derrick Henry, I mean, you could tell their game plan was stop Derrick Henry. And like you were saying, the entire Titans offense revolves around Derrick Henry. The play action is so important to them that, like, without Derrick Henry producing, their play action wasn't effective. And the Ravens it was so strange, but they were using their fullback as a tight end so they could run like 2 tight end and 3 tight end sets. That was
Ricard was massive out there, bro.
Yeah, I mean they were basically going back to their offense a little bit last year with like their 2 and 3 tight end sets, but they were using Ricard as one of the tight ends basically. And Greg Roman finally pulled out a little bag of tricks. He finally showed something for the first time this season, I'd say, with some nice option plays and just some nice trick plays in general. Yeah, I mean, this was just a fantastic win for the Ravens. Lamar can throw. I want to say Lamar can throw.
Yeah. I do want to say this, though. Besides Hollywood Brown, the other receivers still do struggle to get open. And they do make a lot of drops still. Yeah. That's something to note for next week's game. If they can't get, other receivers going besides Hollywood Brown, I mean, Lamar can keep running and running, but if they figure that out, I mean, the team's got to figure out who they're going to throw to besides Hollywood Brown, because seems like their only receiver that can catch.
Yeah, him and Andrews were the only people really pulling in big catches this game, but yeah, the Ravens have a big receiver problem. They need another receiver to go along with Brown. Hopefully a primary receiver, so Brown can be the secondary like speedster. But I do also want to address the standing on the field controversy. People that didn't watch the Ravens and Titans earlier this season wouldn't understand why this happened. They would be like, "Oh, the Ravens are disrespectful and stuff." But not only like if you watch the game in general, but also the regular season game. In the regular season, basically unprompted for like no reason, the Titans just went out onto the Ravens logo and just stomped on it and started trash talking their players. And John Harbaugh even got into a confrontation with them. That level of disrespect, like, you shouldn't be surprised that the Ravens disrespected them right back. Like, I think it was well-deserved on their part. I mean, they beat them, so now they get to talk the trash. Yeah, and just, like, even during the game, I forgot who it was exactly, but one of the Titans players flicked off Lamar Jackson, and Lamar looked at him and said, "I bet," and then he won the game. So, let the Ravens talk their talk. They've earned it. It's really funny because this Ravens and Titans like little rivalry that's brewing is more intense than like a lot of other divisional matchup rivalries, which is
definitely this year. I feel like a lot of divisional rivalries are kind of took it down a notch. I just think personally, I think it was poetic. The fact that they lost, they struggled back in week 11, and then the comeback, what it mattered, much more, and proceed on in the playoffs. And then the fact that the game-sealing interception to lead to the Vincent logo. Oh, I think that was just like, that was perfect ending to the game.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the Saints versus the Bears. So the Saints beat the Bears 21-9. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch like the second half because I had some stuff in real life to do. Also, it was it was kind of boring. All right, so I wasn't like really pushing to watch it. But just from the first half, what I kind of noticed is that Mitch Trubisky looked decent. He's not horrible. I mean, he could be a nice backup. Eventually, like when he leaves the Bears, I think he could be a nice backup. The Bears, I was really surprised that they kept it so close up until the half. Like the halftime score was like 3-7 or something. And
It was.
this game was airing on Nickelodeon. And I think this is probably one of the worst games to try and get people into football with, especially with that first half.
Agreed.
When you want someone to get into football, you show them like a more of an offensive game, like maybe like a Steelers versus a Browns game or a football team game. I don't know. So it was kind of weird that it just was bad for I think Nickelodeon to get that boring of a game scheduled. I think the NFL kind of knew, so they kind of threw him a little bit of a bone. But
yeah,
Michael Thomas, he is definitely looking like he's coming back to being closer to Michael Thomas than he was in these past few weeks. And the Saints secondary, it's pretty exploitable, man. I mean, Mitch Trubisky was throwing all over them. I'm concerned for their secondary going forward. But yeah, those are my notes from just watching the first half. What about you?
I mean, for me, it's just the Bears' offense is so nauseating to watch. It just seems like there's no momentum. I mean, the team had really no momentum. They literally lost and then made the playoffs. So the team was momentumless. Trubisky just really isn't their guy. Allen Robinson's probably his last game as a Bear, right, and rightfully so. They underutilized him. I mean, for me, the Bears defense, yeah. Hey, I want him to come to the football team, so let's see where it goes. The Bears defense seems to always be the bright spot of the team. I mean, you're talking about how they kept them to 3-7. That's because it solely was on the Bears defense to really step it up.
Khalil Mack was insane.
Yeah, for me, it's just the game kind of came down the way it did because the Bears offense was so anemic that the defense was just going to tire out being on the field consistently, and then pretty much once they got tired, they gave up points. That's how I saw came to the Saints, because the Saints scored like 14 of their 21 points literally in the second half. They just took advantage of the defense always being out there, and I mean, literally the game plan was just to beat them slow and methodically, which is not entertaining, of course, like you mentioned, but they had nearly 40 minutes in time of possession in a 60-minute game, or 60-minute plus game, but they had literally just beat them slow methodically. I feel like that was kind of the name of the game, and that was it for them. The Saints, offensively, they feel like they can do more. It just felt like this game was kind of like, oh, well, it's the Bears. Let's just beat them out slowly, and then kind of just, go from there. And that's kind of what happened. It seemed like that was the game plan. It was well executed in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. So let's jump to the biggest, the probably the most hype game of this weekend. The Steelers lost to the Browns 37-48. I'm just gonna kick this off with Juju just needs to stop talking to reporters for good. I mean, like, if anybody asks him any type of question, he just needs to say no comment or give a one-word answer like Marshawn Lynch and move on, because he's really not helping this team. Like,
it's just like salt in the wound every time. It's so bad.
I mean, like I said earlier, like the more motivation you give another team at this level, the worse it's going to end up being for you. Like, teams are looking for motivation to get them hyped up for the game, and you're giving it away for free, basically.
Oh yeah. And my thing is, people were concerned about the Browns because they, didn't practice because of the cases they had and all that. I think actually worked out to their benefit because they actually rested up, to be as rested, maybe just as rested as the Steelers starters were. So they had a lot more time to just, get prepared, maybe mentally, physically, to, for this matchup, and obviously Juju pretty much it's a kiss of death pretty much, and just like he set that team up for failure. My biggest takeaway of this game, the first half of the game kind of reminded me of Washington versus the Browns earlier this season. I think it was week 3 when they played, where pretty much Haskins threw a bunch of picks and set the Browns up for in pretty much scoring position every single time he threw an interception or turned over the ball. First half of this game kind of reminded me of the Washington football team versus Browns game in week 3. All these turnovers that Big Ben threw, and then the Steelers even had, it kind of reminded me how Haskins turned over the ball a lot throughout that whole game and just set the Browns up in scoring position every single time. I mean, literally the fumble for the Steelers had literally gave the Browns a touchdown in this game. Just really reminded me of that game. I had a lot of like deja vu. It's just like I just felt like the Browns were literally given so many points just based off the Steelers' mistakes. So for me, I kind of felt like this was one of those games where the Steelers, even though they did decent in the second half, it was just they gave up way too many points in the first half to even come back.
Yeah, I mean the first quarter score was 28-0. Like that's you're not. I'm sorry, but unless you're like the Tom Brady led Patriots, you're not coming back from that. Like
I can't really get mad at the Steelers defense either because they're literally playing on a shortened field every single time. They're literally nearly in the red zone or in the red zone, it felt like. So I can't even get mad at the Steelers defense. They did all they could, but it's just like everything kind of was against them.
Yeah, and also I just think that like even to go off the rushing stuff, I don't think that they even really could afford to run that much because they were down so much early on. Like it just kind of killed their ability to rush. So yeah, I mean this is just a really bad game for the Steelers. I mean, we both said that they were pretenders in the season, but I mean I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I really didn't. I also don't think Juju coming back, or if he does, I don't think he's getting a massive bag. I really don't.
I don't think he should get. I don't think they should bring him back. I mean, he's a good player, but he's a. I don't want to call him a distraction, but he does kind of make the situation much worse when he makes comments like that. It makes the loss look much more embarrassing, especially because the Browns are the Browns, and I just felt like what was I even supposed to mean at this point now?
The Browns had a locker room video after the win. Did you see that?
They were Corvette. Yeah, they were clowning Juju like crazy.
If that isn't proof that what Juju is saying really is sticking to the other teams, I mean that there you go. Juju he's fumbling his own bag right now. Because he was supposed to get paid this offseason. Like regardless of what team he goes to, he was supposed to get paid. I think that contract is going down at a massive rate from what it should have been.
Yeah, I mean it's really bad because Juju he played well in that wildcard game. But you just won't remember that because you just remember the comments he made and then pretty much everyone clowning him after they lost. That's all you remember. You don't remember the stats he even had.
Yeah, I believe he had over 100 yards. So he wasn't really an issue for this game, like in terms of on the field, but off the field, he really did not do this team any favors.